A federal judge has ruled that the government's no-fly list violates constitutional rights. In a 65-page ruling, U.S. District Judge Anna Brown wrote, "The court concludes international travel is not a mere convenience or luxury in this modern world. Indeed, for many, international travel is a necessary aspect of liberties sacred to members of a free society." So could this now be the beginning of the end for the no-fly list? Joining us to discuss are Mashal, a plaintiff in this case, Gadeir Abbas, an attorney for the Council on American-Islamic Relations, Hugh Handeyside, an attorney for the ACLU National Security Project, and Naveed Shinwari, a plaintiff in the no-fly list lawsuit of Tanvir versus Holder. So I want to thank you all for joining me today. And Hugh, let's start with you. So first of all, to be clear, there are multiple lawsuits that are out there challenging the no-fly list, something that's been around since post-September 11th and the attacks that took place. But tell us specifically what it is that this lawsuit that the ACLU brought is referring to.
Well, this is a landmark ruling, sort of the first of its kind. It's a challenge to the way that the no-fly list is administered, and specifically to the lack of any meaningful redress procedure that the government has in place for those who are mistakenly placed on the no-fly list. And as you know, being placed on a no-fly list can have devastating consequences. And to place people on the no-fly list indefinitely without giving them an opportunity to contest that or to understand the basis for their placement on the no-fly list is fundamentally unfair. And that's what this lawsuit challenges.
Well, one of the things that the government says is, in trying to argue against these type of lawsuits is that people do have ways to address this if they are put on the no-fly list. But is that really true? How easy is it to try to find out why you're on it, how you can get off?
It's exceedingly difficult. And the process that the government has in place is, at least what the court called it, wholly ineffective. The government never actually tells you one way or the other whether you're actually on the no-fly list. And if you follow the process that the government provides, you don't really have an opportunity to understand why you've been placed on the list, to see any of the secret evidence that's been used to place you on the list, or to contest that before a judge. So the court yesterday ruled that the government does have to provide something meaningful in place of what's already there. And this is a huge step in the right direction.
And so, Gadeir, too, the FBI has said that there are about 20,000 names on the no-fly list, and that includes about 500 U.S. citizens. What do we know about the people for the most part overall, if there is some kind of a broad trend that find themselves on this list?
From the people that call me at CAIR and my colleagues at CAIR offices throughout the country make it very clear that Muslims, folks that travel to the Middle East, are the folks that end up on these watch lists.
And tell us more, too, about some of the people that have called you.
And what happens a lot of times is that because the process of placing people on the no-fly list is an unchecked authority that the government has retained for itself, that leads to situations where the FBI makes it their business to put people in vulnerable positions to extract information from them. And that is one of the issues that we've seen over and over again, and we call it extrajudicial exile. So an American citizen is allowed to fly abroad, but after their trip is over and they try to fly back to the U.S., they're unable to do so because they end up on the no-fly list. And they don't find out because the government told them that they're on the no-fly list. They pack their bags, they say goodbye to their loved ones accompany them to the airport, and instead of leaving for their trip back to the U.S., they have to make that humiliating phone call to let their family know that they have to pick them up back from the airport because for whatever reason, the government that they pledge allegiance to considers them too dangerous to fly.
Now, Abe, how is it that you found out you were on the no-fly list?
Just as he said, I was actually traveling for work that day, Midway Airport back in April 2010, and I couldn't print my boarding pass the night before. I've never had any trouble flying, and so I called Southwest Airlines. I said, I can't print my boarding pass from the house. What's the deal? They told me to go right to the ticket counter the next morning. When I went to the ticket counter the next morning, I handed the lady my license. She kind of gave me a weird look as she was typing my name in the computer. Then she went in back for about 5 minutes. And when she came back out, I heard some commotion behind me, and I was surrounded by around 30 TSA and Chicago police. She told me that I was on the no-fly list, and the FBI was on their way to the building, and they wanted to speak with me. And that's how I found out I was on the no-fly list.
Now, you're one of 13 plaintiffs in this case that the judge ruled on yesterday. You're a veteran. What reasoning did they give you when all this commotion was happening, when all this was going down at the airport?
They never gave me any reasoning ever through all the things that I went through. I've never had any official reason why I was placed on the list. So we don't know why I was placed on the list. And that was part of the lawsuit, why I was so excited to get involved with it, because, you know, as Hugh mentioned earlier, the FBI could just play games with the list if they want to, and nobody would know what was going on. So I've never had any official reason why I was put on there.
Well, so Hugh, let's do a little background here. What is the official purpose for having a no-fly list? If people aren't told why they're on it, why is it something that exists to begin with? Walk us through the history.
Well, I don't speak for the government, but it's obviously in place because the government feels that it wants to prevent terrorists from boarding airplanes. The problem is twofold. We have information that we really don't understand, we don't see, we don't know about, that forms the basis for placing people on the no-fly list. So it's secret evidence, and it's a secret standard that's used. And then the government doesn't really have any meaningful process in place for those who have been placed on the no-fly list mistakenly, or who believe the government's wrong in its placement of them on the no-fly list. So maybe we have bad information going in, but then we also have no way to correct that bad information.
Now, I've got a comment here from one of our viewers. Justice Holmes says, if the government wants to punish a human, it should have to prove its case first. The burden of proof should be on the government. You know, and in essence, you know, Gadeir, doesn't this turn out like we're treating people that they are guilty of some type of a crime before any reasoning has been given by the government, before any of this has been playing out in a rule of law? I mean, by telling people if they can't fly, you're punishing them.
Absolutely. The way that the no-fly list and other lists like it, the way that they function in reality is a means by which the FBI metes out punishment that is outside of the judicial process. And in fact, it really is and operates as a system of secret law. There's a lot of speculation inside the Muslim community of the types of actions that folks can take or can avoid to take that will lead them to being placed on the no-fly list or other watch lists. And so that's really what it does, is it empowers the government to punish people that have been charged with no crime, that have been convicted of no crime. And we see this time and time again. They are young Muslim males that end up being charged with no crime at all. And they end up on these lists for durations of time that really end up impacting their lives in significant and substantial ways. Imagine one of my clients in Virginia was a teenager when he first found himself on the no-fly list. And as a teenager who's studying information technology, one can imagine what impact that would have on one's employment prospects to have to disclose to your employer that, no, I can't travel to visit this customer. I can't travel to attend that conference. And the government is doing this without making any of us any safer, unfortunately.
Abe, how has this impacted your life?
Well, it's definitely took a big hit early on financially because, you know, I'm a traveling dog trainer, and that's what I was doing that day, going to Washington State to train a lady's dog up there that I'd never met. And so it impacted me financially. On a personal level, I missed a lot of things as well. You know, weddings, funerals, things you can't get to without air travel right away. So, I mean, you know, it is a very big deal. A lot of people over the years have said, well, you know, they can travel by bus or by car or this and that. But I mean, think about it. If I'm in Chicago and my friend passed away in Southern California, what am I going to do? Drive 4 days out there, go to his funeral, and drive 4 days back? I mean, now you're talking about 9 days of work you're missing over something that you could have done in one day. So it really does impact you, personal and financially.
Naveed, now tell us your story, too. How is it that you found out you were on the no-fly list?
Well, just like as my colleagues have said, all these things that Abe mentioned and Hugh and Gadeir, that have happened to me, too. First of all, I was... the first time I had any trouble boarding a flight was that I was coming back from Afghanistan in February of 2012. And I was denied boarding in Dubai airport, and I was there for 5 days with my mother. I could not come back to the U.S., where I pretty much grew up. It was very shocking, frustrating, and I had no idea what I have done wrong. The embarrassment that you have to go through in the airports and everywhere, that everyone asking you, what do you have done? And you have to try to clarify yourself to them that you haven't done nothing wrong. Coming back from Dubai, finally, after a few hours of interrogation and going through back and forth with FBI, I was allowed to fly back here. I was interrogated again several times in the airport and at home in Omaha, Nebraska. The first time I found out that I was on no-fly list, after that, at that time I was not told that I'm not on no-fly list, but it was in March of 2012 where I had a job to go to Orlando, Florida. And I actually have one of that piece of paper that this is, as far as the transparency, openness goes, this is what I got at the end of the day from a police officer that told me that I'm on a no-fly list, a selectee list. That's all they showed me. They didn't give me any other reason. And thus far, I've been.
Well, is that a 1-800 number that was on that piece of paper? Was there someone you were supposed to call?
1866 number. Yeah, that's correct.
And did you try calling it?
I did not know. I was. I think it's just a TSA 1866 number.
Yeah, there's nobody that can help you, and I mean it's foolish that they would even give them that. It's just ridiculous that they would even give them that, because there's no. That's the point of the lawsuit. There was no avenue for people like us to go down to figure this whole thing out. It was just ridiculous.
And how does it work too? I mean, like, so you let's say, does this happen? You said, Abe, for example, that you weren't able to print out your ticket online the night before, so then you went to the airport. Are you told flat out, we're sorry, sir, but you have been listed as someone who is not allowed to fly? Or do they just keep bringing in people? How specific are they?
Well, I was told right away from the girl at the ticket counter I'm on the no-fly list and I wouldn't be able to fly any commercial airline. When the FBI came, they a few minutes later, they told me that as well. They wanted to go back and speak with me, go through the whole question and answer session with them. And, I'm half Italian, half Arab descent. So, but their main focus really was my Arab descent and Islamic background and everything else. So, they didn't ask me anything about the Italian side. But so it was pretty obvious kind of what was going on that end.
So, Hugh, the legal reasoning that we're using here is that people simply have no way to be able to challenge this, and therefore it's something that can be unconstitutional. But are there other legal arguments out there that people are trying to make that it's also a program that profiles and is prejudiced and is biased if the makeup of those on the list are mostly Muslim and male?
I think that's an inquiry that will come later when we get into the substance of whether or not people have been rightly or wrongly included on the list. But for now, the question is whether or not the due process clause of the Fifth Amendment has been violated. And the court ruled yesterday that it has. And the court also ruled that it was improperly promulgated. It was improperly issued, the procedure, as a regulation. So it basically struck down the process on that basis as well, which has broader implications for other people aside from our clients who are on the list right now.
Well, let's just talk about, I feel like often, we don't hear too much from people like Abe or Naveed. Unfortunately, when we do hear about the no-fly list, it'll be cases that are just so on their face, completely absurd. First there was a glitch, apparently, that put a toddler onto the no-fly list, and the toddler was then removed from the plane, which obviously everyone can easily question what it is that a toddler might have done that would make them a dangerous passenger. There was a time also in 2004 when the former Senator Edward Kennedy was actually also stopped because he apparently had mistakenly been put on the no-fly list. What happens in cases like this, Gadeir?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of issues in the mid-2000s. Nelson Mandela was on the no-fly list for being associated with ANC, of course, the organization that was critical to pushing back and ending apartheid. Yusuf Islam, the Cat Stevens, the singer of Peace Train, was on the no-fly list. And those types of kind of outlandish examples, babies and celebrities and politicians, those to a meaningful extent, because it makes it very difficult for the government to continue operating the no-fly list when powerful people that can bring the government to bear on problems and bring media attention to bear on their difficulties. So they've removed those folks, but they haven't removed the Muslims that are on the no-fly list, the Muslims that are in another list called the selectee list that ends up preventing people from getting on connections, results in them being interrogated each time they enter the country, results in them being delayed hours every single time that they fly, to the point where many individuals on the selectee list no longer fly. So maybe it's the case that the government has taken out these outlandish examples, babies and Ted Kennedy. But the root of the problem itself is that the no-fly list is a fool's errand. People on the no-fly list, guess what? They can take cruise ships, they can drive cars, and if someone is too dangerous to fly a plane, then the government shouldn't be putting them on secret watch lists. The government should have evidence of criminal wrongdoing and should be able to bring charges. The fact that the government doesn't bring charges against people on the no-fly list is an indication that the government shouldn't be putting anybody on the no-fly list at all to begin with. And so we need to, the ACLU's lawsuit is a critical step forward, and it's a historic ruling that the no-fly list is unconstitutional in the manner that it operates. But as Hugh mentioned, it's the first step the first critical step on a long journey to push back against the government's predilection to rely on extrajudicial processes to punish American persons.
And that's the thing, right, is, it just seems like bad policy, and it also seems sloppy. And, we bring up incidents like a senator or people in power, as you mentioned, or a child. And those are things that people can laugh at, but this has had very real life effects. I mean, Naveed.
And I just wanted to add something to what Gadeir was saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that was that I was myself very amazed by the way, FBI, I read about Abe's story and the way they approached me, how they are willing to put Americans' lives on stake in order for people to become informants for them. And they will allow you to either board a flight or let you, take you off of the no-fly list. This is it's absurd, and to think that they're using this as a leverage against people, and specifically the Muslim community, is very troubling. And I think that's why we all have to come together on this in order to.
Well, Naveed, give us some more detail on that too, because certainly that is something that has been reported, is that we have seen the FBI try to convince people to become informants for them in exchange for getting off of the no-fly list. You yourself were approached this way.
After I was placed on a no-fly list, they approached me and they said that clearly that we know that you don't have a job right now, and we have financial incentives, and the term they would use is that you help us, we help you. And I pretty much knew that that this is what they meant by that term.
I was told something very similar. They actually told me they had great news for me and they would like to meet with me 2 months after I found out I was on the no-fly list. And we met at a hotel. They said they wanted to buy me something to eat and answer all my questions, which I thought was fishy, because it's like, why wouldn't they just tell me over the phone I'm off the no-fly list? Why waste my time or theirs? So I met him at the hotel. When I got there, I thought we were going to be in the lobby and sit down, and I called the agent up on his phone. I said, I'm here. And he says, okay, I'll be right down. So that kind of indicated he was in a room. And when he came down, he told me, would you mind coming up to the 4th floor with me? And which, of course, the plot thickens. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go up. I got to see what these people want out of me. And I went up to the room with them, and it was like a little stakeout. They had the coffee, the donuts. The other agent was already in the room. And they said, listen, we got great news. We can get you off this list today, but you have to agree to become an undercover informant for us. They also told me that I would be paid for this position under the table. It's not something I would claim on my taxes. And I couldn't even tell my wife about this position. At the time, I had 3 kids going on 4. I got 5 now. But I'm just not an ideal candidate to be moonlighting as James Bond for the FBI and an informant at that. So that was when I told them I would like to speak with an attorney, and they told me to leave, and that's when I contacted the ACLU.
And were there ever any repercussions for you saying no, Abe or Naveed, to either one of you?
Early on, there was for me, because one of my friends is actually a federal agent with the State Department, and they went to him because they knew they couldn't talk to me anymore, and they went to him and told him to call me and tell me to get rid of the ACLU. I'll never get off the no-fly list if I have the ACLU. And they kind of used him as a way to talk to me without an attorney present. And there was little things like that happened throughout the last 4 years. But, luckily the ACLU has been very good with me. They were only a phone call away each time. And so I didn't fall for any of that stuff.
So the proxy intimidation on the part of the FBI didn't work. Naveed, how about for you?
Ever since the no-fly list, I haven't heard anything. But throughout the past some time, they have been to my friends' houses and my family and a lot of people that they kind of ruined my image with everyone, and that's been something that's been very troubling.
And what do you mean when you say ruined your image? What were they telling people?
Well, asking all sort of these questions from them, and ultimately what people think of me as someone that want to harm the U.S. A lot of people wouldn't know that what they really want from them, but they were just looking for extra information regarding myself.
Yeah, they questioned some of my family and friends too. They actually questioned my father-in-law, and I've been married to his daughter at the time for almost 11 years. I mean, it was like after I told them no to the informant position, they were kind of just, now all of a sudden their investigation on me started. It was the strangest thing. And I don't know what the point of it all was. They questioned one of my other friends, and they asked him if I had ever done anything unethical or illegal in front of him. And he told them that sometimes I speed in the car, and that didn't make him too happy. But it was just, the whole thing was just pretty ridiculous. And but he's right. They do try to kind of make you think your image will be tarnished. But with me, I was never worried about that because, I'm a former Marine, and, if they were going to try to tarnish my image, they could start right there. I mean, I don't understand what the whole point of questioning friends and family was myself, but they did do that after I told them no, similar to the other person as well.
And Naveed, before we go here too, tell us about how this has impacted your family life.
Very much. I got married in January of 2012. I have not seen my wife in about 27 of some months now.
And where does your wife live?
Married. She's in Afghanistan.
And so you are not allowed to leave the United States to go to Afghanistan. When's the last time that you tried to do it? Do you ever feel like maybe if you buy a ticket this time you'll luck out and maybe it just won't come up in the system?
You try that, but that's the part of it. It's so secretive that they won't tell you that either how you can get off of it, how you got on it, and I have no way to know that except to buy a ticket and go to the airport and find out myself. But I have not heard from them that Naveed, you're off of the list.
And how's your wife doing? What does she think about all this?
Personally, emotionally, it's been a big trauma for all of us. She's sick right now, and I can't be there with her. My grandpa passed away about 3 months ago. One of my uncle's wife passed away, and I unfortunately I can't do. I have no answer for no one there. When they ask me, that's America. It's not even a third world country. How come you can't fly or whatever? But I have no answer for them. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you.
Now, one of the other things that seems crazy to me about this is that even lawmakers can't get a whole lot of answers about this. Just earlier this year in April, Representative Keith Ellison from Minnesota sent a letter to Jay Johnson over at the Department of Homeland Security, signed with more than 20 other members of Congress. And they basically were talking about how they said watch lists are an important tool to guard against terrorism, but they must strike the right balance with U.S. civil rights and liberties. Gadeir, why can't members of Congress get answers about the no-fly list?
Well, the way that the no-fly list is structured is the people that are preventing Abe and Naveed from flying don't have the underlying information about why it is that Abe and Naveed and others on the no-fly list can't fly. So there's an agency called the Terrorist Screening Center, and it receives what it terms as nominations to the no-fly list. The only nomination that you'll never want in your life is to the no-fly list. And so the FBI and other government agencies submit these nominations to the Terrorist Screening Center. The Terrorist Screening Center, as a general matter, in the vast, vast majority of the cases, accepts those nominations. And then what it does is it separates the identities from the information that justified their placement on the list. And then all it has then is a list of identities of people that are on the no-fly list. And it'll send that list of identities to other agencies, such as the TSA at the airports, CBP, and a few other places. And those screening agencies, all they have is a list of names. And so when you get to the airport and you give your passenger identifying information, all they're doing is seeing if your name matches a name on the no-fly list. And if it does, then by executive edict, they're not allowed to let you fly. And so they don't. But DHS and TSA, which administers this farcical administrative redress process, doesn't know why people are on the no-fly list, which I think, underscores the importance of Judge Brown's ruling that the process in place right now is completely and entirely wholly ineffective.
And Naveed and Abe, has this at all made you nervous or changed the ways that you practice your faith?
Me, no. It hasn't affected that at all with me. Of course, you wonder if picking this faith got you on the list in the first place. But, for me, it hasn't changed the way I practice. I have nothing to hide. I'm a peaceful person, and that's all there is to it. So it hasn't affected me in that way.
Naveed, what about you?
It has made me actually a better Muslim. It has made me practice my faith even more. And so it hasn't really changed anything as far as that.
All right, we have to go in a moment, but Hugh, I'll give you the last word here. Do you think that this is the beginning of the end of the no-fly list? Are we finally going to see this thing taken away?
Well, certainly we're hoping that this is the beginning of the end of the procedure that the government's had in place for challenging placement on the no-fly list. And that's a critical first step. And we're looking forward to the process that the government or Congress will have to use to put in place a process that actually comports with the Constitution.
All right. Abe, Gadeir, Hugh, and Naveed, thank you all for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, to see this full 65-page ruling, you can check out the links in our resource well below and stay tuned to HuffPost Live. Much more coming up.